welcome to this month's edition of Suburban Soundwaves. I'm Steve Shohfi, and this month our guest is blues harmonica player Rob Paparozzi from Cranford. Rob is one of the finest blues harmonica players and vocalists in the nation, and he's got a diverse career that we're going to be discussing today, as well as hearing some performances from Rob. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Welcome. Thanks for the intro.
Let's start off. My first question, it seems to me that you grew up in the town of Linden, now reside in Cranford, but you're really a product of the town of Linden. It seems that Linden has had more than its fair share of fine musicians that have come from that town. What do you attribute that to? People like George Naha, Mitch Eisenberg, yourself.
Well, I guess I don't know. I don't know why Linden has produced, and it seems that the artists that it has produced have kind of been coming out of sort of like a blues bag or jazz bag kind of thing. Sure, it wasn't anything we learned at Linden High School, I'll tell you that much. But maybe just being a small little industrial type of town, you know, had something to do. And being close to New York, sure, and Newark, kind of growing up in those neighborhoods where we could kind of get out to some clubs when we were younger, exposed us to a little bit more than the normal suburban community.
And you might have all had an influence on each other, too.
True.
George on you.
Definitely. George Naha, definitely. We were coming up at the same time, and George, I remember George had a band with his brother Ed Naha, and we met at a Battle of the Bands in Roselle Park at the Roselle Park High School, and that's the first time I met George, and ever since then we've been pretty good friends.
You do you know, many different types of music, but primarily you're noted for your blues performances. Who turned you on to the blues?
First my mom did, because she used to, my mom was sort of like a closet musician. She never really, I never knew she could play, and then all of a sudden one day she sat down at the piano and she sounded like a great piano. She knew 10 songs on the piano, and when she sat down and played those 10 songs, it sounded like she really knew what she was doing. So that was my first exposure to music. And then we'd go out food shopping and stuff like that, and she'd always buy like a blues record, like an old B.B. King record for 99 cents at ShopRite or something, and she loved the blues stuff, so she'd bring it home, and I'd listen to that. So that was my first exposure to the blues.
And growing up in a musical family, what was your household like?
Well, it wasn't really a musical family, totally. It was kind of, because my two older brothers, my brother Lou and my other older brother Mario, they started playing guitar, and they kind of like had a band, and that kind of like influenced me a little bit. But we never had any formal training. I never had lessons or anything like that.
Never.
So music wasn't really encouraged on that level too much, but it wasn't discouraged either. We could pretty much do what we wanted to do, as far as, you know, if somebody went out and got a guitar and we wanted to learn how to play it on our own, we could do that. I started out, my parents did buy me a drum set, and I was the world's worst drummer.
Is that the drum set that's down in your basement now? For rehearsal?
No, that was sold. They sold it because I refused to take lessons, and then after I sold the drums, or they sold the drums, they said, I said, I know what it is, I want a guitar. And they said, well, no, we just spent all that money on the drum set, so if you want a guitar, you go up and play your brother's guitar and mess around with that. And there was an old harmonica laying on the shelf that nobody had really used, and I picked up the harmonica, and my brother Lou had brought home the first Paul Butterfield record back in like 1966, and I heard an electric or amplified harmonica. I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know it was a harmonica, and I heard the sound, and I realized at that point that was a sound that I'd like to make, and if I could do it with that little harmonica, I was going to try it. I went down the basement and started from there.
Wow. And completely self-taught.
Yeah, I went back later on, much later on, to try and learn how to read on the instrument and make theoretical sense out of it.
Tell me about some of the early bands you were involved with in high school. And remember anything about them? Anything stick out?
Yeah, one of the real early bands I started on, I was about like 9th grade, had sort of like a rock and roll kind of cover band, played at the local dances, the CYO dances. And I remember growing up in Linden, you got back to that before about influences. I remember when I was trying to put a band together, I would listen to what my brothers were doing and try and copy the sounds and stuff like that. But basically, I was listening, before I was exposed to the heavy blues stuff, I was I was listening to the Beatles and the Stones growing up, stuff that was on the radio.
Well, Stones were a blues-influenced band early on.
They were, but I didn't even realize
that connection,
that much. I mean, I knew they were playing something different. I didn't even realize they were playing American music until I went back and researched what was going on. With the stuff that they were playing, that it was, you know, Chicago music.
Right. Let's talk about some other aspects of your career. You've done an awful lot of jingle work over the course of your career. How did you get involved in that?
Well, the jingle work kind of came out of being in New York. I used to wonder. I mean, I used to when I was in college and I got out of college and I was still playing, and I used to wonder. You know, I'd hear the commercials and I'd hear the harmonica on movie soundtracks or in a movie, and I used to wonder who's playing the harmonica. I said, you know, and then I started to find out that they had session guys that would do certain things like that, and I started playing out in New York, and before you know it, some producers were coming down, and they'd hear it, and they'd say, hey, you know, why don't you come in and play? I have a jingle house. And before you know it, I was doing commercials, and then I realized how it was done.
What we're looking at here is something that you did for Cinemax, I guess, a few years ago.
Right.
Was this the Hudson River Rats performing the music in the background? Are you on camera?
They did a promo going from 87 into 88 or something like that, and they just hired our whole band to come on in the studio up in the House of Music in West Orange, and they interspersed it with shots of the new movies coming out, and it was cool. The band was in black and white, and the movies were in color, and it was nice to use the whole band on camera.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. You also did some on-camera work for NBC. You were in an I'm for New York spot, which I think we're going to take a look at in a few seconds here.
That was recently.
And can you tell us how you got that gig?
I'm for New York. I get called a lot to go in and play music on the music tracks, play harmonica on a commercial or whatever. And I went in, and they wanted some harmonica because they were going to have a pretty girl in Central Park somewhere. I'm for New York campaign. They were going to have a girl in the park playing harmonica. So let's get a harmonica player in to play on the soundtrack. I played on the soundtrack, and then all of a sudden, I get home and they go, you know what? We got enough pretty girls and models in this thing. Would you like to be in the video? And I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to do it. So that's how I did I'm for New York. And it was a lot of people saw that because it was on during the Super Bowl and all kinds of stuff.
What are some of the other products that you've been involved in jingle work?
Anywheres from, you know, I guess, Oxidol bleach to Amico gasoline. There's a lot. There's a lot of
Wendy's hamburgers.
Wendy's, and I've done Pepsi. I've done did a Mountain Dew with Bo Diddley, Diet Pepsi with Sonny Rhodes, the blues artist, and Johnny Copeland. And so occasionally you get to go in and work with some really good artists.
Right. And along with that, you've also done a tremendous amount of recording work. I know you're on the new Judy Collins album. I have you at home on a Cyndi Lauper album. You're on a Roberta Flack album, I think, that I have at home. How does that work come about, and how do you enjoy that?
It's it's a word of mouth kind of thing. It's kind of like the New York music scene, and if you do a good job, somebody will refer you to the next job. And and it's not like a thing where they call up an agency and say, I need a harmonica player. They want to be referred. I was referred by Paul Schaefer for the Cyndi Lauper job, and the Roberta Flack job through some local musicians in Manhattan that had heard me do other work. And same thing with the Judy Collins. It's if you do a good job and you can get the job done fast, and do what the producer wants, you'll get the call.
When we come back from a commercial, would you perform something for us here in the studio?
Sure, I'd love to.
Okay, what will you be doing?
A song I wrote. This was on our new CD, Hudson River Rats First Take. It's called. It's out in all the record stores. Compact Disc World and Tower Records is carrying it. And it's a song called Cleveland, Mississippi that I wrote about the predecessor.
Oh, you wrote this song?
I wrote this song. It's about Charlie Patton, who was before Robert Johnson, which he doesn't get as much
notoriety.
Yeah, not that much. And everybody knows of the Robert Johnson thing. But Charlie Patton came a little bit earlier and was from the same area and was a heck of a blues artist. So
great. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that in just a minute. We'll be right back on Suburban Soundwaves with Rob Paparozzi.